Have you ever wondered why some people seem to enjoy hurting others? Why they don't just accidentally cause pain, but deliberately, methodically destroy someone they once claimed to care about? What I'm about to share with you will completely change how you see human behavior forever. Today, we're diving deep into Carl Jung's most disturbing discovery about the human psyche, something so dark that most people spend their entire lives avoiding it. But understanding this could literally save your mental health, and maybe even your life. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever been betrayed by someone close to you in a way that felt calculated, cold, almost surgical in its precision? Where you thought to yourself, they knew exactly what would hurt me most, and they did it anyway. If you're nodding right now, you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not crazy. What happened to you wasn't random. It wasn't an accident. And according to one of psychology's greatest minds, it follows a predictable, terrifying pattern. Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist who gave us concepts like introversion, extroversion, and the collective unconscious, discovered something about human nature that most people don't want to acknowledge. He found that inside every single person, including you, including me, lives what he called the shadow. The shadow isn't just your bad side or your negative emotions. It's something far more dangerous. It's the part of your psyche that contains everything you've repressed, denied, or refused to admit about yourself. Your rage, your envy, your lust for power, your darkest fantasies, all of it lives in your shadow. Now here's where it gets terrifying. Jung discovered that when people refuse to acknowledge their shadow, when they pretend they don't have these dark impulses, the shadow doesn't just disappear. It grows stronger, it takes control, and it starts acting without their conscious awareness. Think about the most cruel person you've ever encountered, the one who seemed to take pleasure in others' pain. Jung would tell you that person isn't inherently evil. They're someone whose shadow has taken the wheel while they're sleeping at the controls of their own mind. But the shadow doesn't just make people cruel randomly. Oh no, it's much more sophisticated and sinister than that. Jung discovered that before someone can deliberately hurt you, something specific has to happen in their mind first. They have to stop seeing you as fully human. This isn't about anger. Anger is hot, impulsive, reactive. This is something else entirely. This is cold, calculated, and systematic. Jung called it dehumanization, and it's the psychological mechanism that makes psychological warfare possible. Here's how it works. And pay close attention, because recognizing this pattern could save you years of confusion and pain. First, person begins to see you not as a complete human being with feelings, rights, and inherent worth, but as something less. In their internal narrative, you become weak, problematic, threatening, or deserving of punishment. You're no longer a person to them. You're an obstacle, a target, or a tool. The scariest part? This process rarely happens overnight. It builds gradually through unspoken judgments, minor slights disguised as jokes, or a constant undercurrent of assumed superiority. The shadow thrives in silence and denial, slowly warping their perception of you until cruelty feels not just acceptable, but righteous. And once that moral boundary is crossed, everything becomes permissible. Any harmful behavior feels justified. Because, in their distorted reality, you're no longer worthy of basic human consideration. But Jung discovered something even more disturbing. This individual dehumanization often spreads like a virus through groups. The person doesn't just dehumanize you in their own mind. They recruit others into their distorted narrative. They twist events to their advantage, frame your actions in the worst possible light, and plant seeds of doubt about your character. Before you know it, you're not just dehumanized in one mind, you're erased from the sight of many. You become the villain in their shared story. Jung warned that when unacknowledged, Shadow energy spreads through group dynamics, friend circles, families, workplaces. It creates an environment where collective cruelty feels justified. You're suddenly facing not just one person's shadow, but an entire group's repressed darkness projected onto you. This is how good people can participate in terrible things, while genuinely believing they're doing the right thing. They've been infected by someone else's shadow projection, and they don't even realize it. Now, here's where Jung's insights get truly chilling. He identified manipulation as one of the shadow's most sophisticated weapons. But we're not talking about obvious manipulation here. We're talking about something far more subtle and devastating. Jung called it instrumental thinking, the tendency to treat people not as individuals with feelings and rights, but as tools or pawns to be used for one's own ends. Manipulative people don't just deceive you randomly. They study you like a scientist studies a lab rat. They observe your values, your fears, your deepest insecurities, not to help you, but to use them as weapons against you. They start small. A distorted truth here, a subtly barbed comment there, a withheld compliment. If you don't resist or set boundaries, the manipulation deepens and becomes more dangerous. Over time, it erodes your sense of reality until you can no longer trust your own perceptions. This isn't accidental. Jung believed this process follows a specific pattern: distortion of reality, testing of boundaries, and ultimately, the complete erosion of your self-esteem and self-trust. When you're caught inside this web, you feel only confusion and chaos. But viewed objectively, it's cold, calculated control. Here's perhaps the most painful truth Jung uncovered. The people closest to you are capable of inflicting the deepest psychological damage. Strangers can hurt you, but only those you trust can destroy you from the inside. Jung called this violation of trust or abuse of intimacy. Those who know your inner world, your values, your identity, your deepest wounds, can precisely target what matters most to you. If you value honesty, they'll lie to you while invoking your trust. If you pride yourself on your character, they'll systematically attack your reputation. If your relationships matter to you, they'll poison others against you behind your back. The shadow doesn't attack randomly. It goes straight for your emotional foundation, because it knows that's where it can inflict the most lasting damage. But Jung discovered an even more insidious layer to this psychological warfare. After someone breaks you, they often engage in what he termed reality manipulation, or what we now call gaslighting. They twist the story in their favor. They claim you misunderstood, imply you're overreacting, or suggest you're being overly sensitive. This isn't simple lying. This is psychological warfare, designed to make you doubt your own instincts and ultimately silence your voice. This creates what Jung called a double victory for the perpetrator. They hurt you, and then they make you feel guilty for noticing it. Your healing threatens them because it disrupts the narrative they've constructed where you're weak and they're justified in their treatment of you. So what's the solution? How do you break free from this toxic cycle? Jung's answer might surprise you. He taught that the strongest response isn't revenge or retaliation, but what he called conscious reaction. When someone intentionally hurts you, your primal instinct might be to strike back harder. But Jung believed this reactivity only feeds the shadow, both yours and theirs. Instead, Jung encouraged responding from a place of clarity and unshakable truth. When you speak calmly, stating facts without poison or revenge, you break the cycle. You refuse to play the role they've assigned you in their dark internal drama. This doesn't mean being passive or accepting abuse. It means responding with integrity. Instead of reactivity, choosing your inner peace over vengeance, and reclaiming ownership of your story. Jung believed that healing was the ultimate rebellion against psychological manipulation. It's proof that the wound doesn't define you, that what happened to you isn't who you are, and that your worth isn't determined by someone else's distorted projections. But here's the part most people don't want to hear. We all have a shadow. Every single one of us is capable of the behaviors we've discussed today. The difference between those who become perpetrators and those who don't isn't the presence or absence of dark impulses, it's awareness. Jung taught that the only way to prevent your own shadow from controlling you is to acknowledge it, understand it, and integrate it consciously. When you deny your capacity for darkness, that darkness gains power over you. When you acknowledge it, you can choose how to channel it constructively. This is why some of the most compassionate people are those who've faced their own darkness and chosen differently. They understand the human capacity for cruelty because they've felt it within themselves, and they've made a conscious choice to act from love instead of fear. The real danger isn't just being hurt. It's allowing that hurt to define who you become. The shadow will always exist, both in others and within yourself. But you're not powerless. With awareness, intention, and conscious response, you can break free from these toxic cycles. You can choose to heal instead of hurt, to build instead of destroy, to love instead of fear. Your healing journey isn't just about you. It's about breaking generational patterns of shadow projection. When you choose consciousness over reactivity, you're not just saving yourself, you're potentially saving everyone who comes after you from carrying forward these toxic patterns. If this video resonated with you, if you've experienced the kind of deliberate harm we've discussed today, I want you to know that your experience is valid, your pain is real, and your healing is possible. Share your thoughts in the comments below. But remember, this is a space for healing and growth, not for perpetuating more shadow energy. Let's use this knowledge to break cycles, not continue them. And if this video helped you understand something you've been struggling with, please share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Sometimes understanding the psychology behind cruel behavior is the first step toward freedom. Subscribe for more deep dives into psychology and human behavior. And remember, the shadow loses its power the moment you shine light on it. You have more strength than you know, and your story isn't over yet. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." The people who hurt us aren't just random actors in our lives. They're mirrors reflecting something we need to understand about human nature, about psychology, and ultimately, about our own capacity for both darkness and light. The choice is always yours. Will you let the shadow win, or will you choose consciousness? Will you perpetuate the cycle, or will you be the one who breaks it? The power has always been in your hands. Now you know how to use it.